to Ask Me Anything About Politics. This is the show where you can ask me anything that you like about politics, and I will do my best to give you a great answer. I know that politics can be really intimidating when you're first trying to learn about it. I know it can feel like trying to learn a new language, so this is the show where you can ask all the questions that you were worried about asking to other people because you were worried that you might seem, I don't know, misinformed or uneducated or anything like that. There's no judgments here. There's no roasting, there's no harassing. It is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. Everybody is welcome here, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. I do not judge. Kyler Woolstrom says, have you ever went to a club? Just went to my first one yesterday. I'm 20. Yeah, I mean, I used to go to the club all the time, but that's not really a question about politics. Kyler, congratulations on going to your first club. I hope you had a nice time. Alrighty, any questions about politics, just throw them in the chat. Mateo says, you need sunlight. I'm doing okay, actually. Oh, Kyler says it was a strip club. Okay, yeah, but again, that's not about politics, so I will be ignoring all of your strip club-related comments going forward, Kyler. Ooh, righty. Welcome, everybody, to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jared. I'm here to answer all your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated, be they left-wing or right-wing. I am not here to judge you. Everybody is welcome, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. I know there's a lot of very popular shows out there where people fight each other and yell at each other and try to own each other and try to win debates and stuff. That is not what this is. This is just good faith answers to all of your good faith questions. John Bradley says, having a kid, has it shifted any of your political positions at all? Not that as far as I can tell right now. Yeah, I've always felt like, I want to have a good life for kids, regardless of if they were, mine or others. And so, yeah, I haven't seen anything happen yet, but catch me as she ages. Who knows? What's up, Spyrus? Good to see you again. Zipper says pro 2A. I am not pro Second Amendment. I think we need more gun control. But yeah, that doesn't mean that people that are pro Second Amendment are wrong. Spyrus says, what do you think about Watergate? I'm not like an expert on Watergate, but I will say that we need a Republican Party that is willing to impeach their own president again. Okay, Cal says, before 2020, nobody talked about politics. Nobody ever asked me what party I was with. Nobody ever. Well, politics is a little bit different these days, Cal. Like there has been a lot more money put into sort of like culturizing politics, where it is much more a part of certain people's identity. The whole Trump regime had a massive effect on whether you were able to call yourself a certain thing, and people were able to sort of like make a lot of assumptions about a person based on what their politics was. And so I think it's really important that we talk about politics. And so I am kind of glad for that shift, even though the road that we took there was a little bumpy and divisive. So I don't love that. Lies Draw says, what do you think about October 7th? I mean, it was a tragedy. It was a horrible tragedy, a terrorist attack. I don't think it was good. John Bradley says, what do you think of flock cameras? This is an invasion of privacy. I saw that in New York they were like covering them up with bags. I actually need to read a little bit more about that, because I was like, I don't know what they are. I never heard of them. What is it supposed to be for, like traffic? Is it supposed to be for birds? I don't know, man. Spyro says, do you think COVID changed humanity on politics? Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, I still think that we are all collectively suffering from like low-level PTSD from COVID. Steve Buscemi says, bad boy outfit. I don't know what that means. What's up, Lesbian? What's up, Mihu? Avete. I'm learning Latin. Ooh, I don't know what avete means in Latin. Vince says, will Trump be 86th soon? I sure hope so. So I don't imagine anything removing him from office in the near future. because the Republican Party is in charge of the government right now, and they will never get rid of a Republican president, regardless of if they are as illegal and incompetent and corrupt as Donald Trump is. Now, what are the things that could get Trump out of office? Until the midterms, it is just going to be health related. So, like, if something happens because he's a severely unhealthy 80-year-old man, like, that could be the thing that 86 is him. But after the midterms, depending on how good Democrats do, I think is a high likelihood that he'll get impeached. Whether or not he'll get removed from office, because remember, impeachment's a two-step process. He gets impeached in the House and then removed from office in the Senate. It's possible, but the odds are a little bit less in our favor that he would actually get removed from office, because Democrats always have a very challenging Senate map. KDY Grant says Trump is daddy. What a weird thing to say. I'll give you a chance to not just spread right-wing propaganda, KD, but if you just keep on making statements like that, then I'm gonna bounce you. Sicaria says, what do you think about Erdogan government? Oh, I don't know too much about it. Spyrus says, do you think Area 51 is hiding something? Not particularly. Austin says, Democrats are a danger to the society and continue to be the racist party always and forever. So that's a pretty inaccurate thing that you just said there, Austin. If you want to ask a question, you can stay. But if you keep on saying wrong things like that, I'm going to have to boot you. All right. KDY says, bounce me in this week, ass live. Okay. Your wish is my command. Alrighty. Steven Peterson says, any idea why gas prices went down like 50 cents in my area? Haven't heard anything about it. I have not heard anything about gas prices going down, either en masse or in specific areas. And Iran just came out and said that they have ended negotiations with America because they did not like how the Trump administration was negotiating with them. And so I don't imagine that gas prices are coming down anytime soon, nationwide or globally. Chili Willy, Muzz King, and Joe Ellen, thank you so much for helping me reach my first gift goal of the day. Reese says, do you think Charlie Kirk deserved to die? No, I do not think Charlie Kirk deserved to die. You will never hear a person who is more anti-Charlie Kirk, what he did and what he stood for, than myself. But nobody deserves what happened to Charlie Kirk. That was a travesty. All right, Stephen Peterson says, if Trump gets impeached and removed from office, would JD just take over? It's possible, but it's also possible that he gets impeached, because it's possible that he was complicit in all of the activity that Trump was impeached for. Oceanaholic says, did they stop negotiating because Israel is bombing Lebanon? They did say that that was one of the things. They said that because Israel won't stop their campaign, and because, the Trump, we keep on getting, push-pulled by the Trump administration. That I believe those were two of the things. All right, let's see here. Anthony says, are we sure politics even matter at this point? Politics matter even more now than they have in the past, Anthony, and I'm happy to go into more detail on that if you like. Stoner Drew says, give me your 2028 presidential candidates take. My take on the 2028 presidential candidates is that we should be focusing on the midterms in 2026 and not focusing on the elections in 28. We got elections happening this year. This is the most important election for putting a stop to what Trump and the Republican Party are doing. And so everybody's got to get out there and vote. Now, if you really want to know who I like for 28, nobody's announced yet, so we don't even know who's running. But I would love it if Chris Murphy ran. All right, Midnight Welder says John Fetterman 28. No, thank you. What would he even run as? He's an outcast in the Democratic Party. Stephen Peterson says, do you think Trump is stringing this Iran issue along for financial gain? I've heard people say it. Potentially. I mean, the issue with Trump and Iran is that there are too many factors that make it personally beneficial for him, even as it is politically damaging for him and his political party. And so he is, running down the path towards the Democrats fucking annihilating the Republican Party at the ballot box in the midterms, because of how unpopular this war is, and because of all the knock-on effects, like how expensive gas is and how inflation is going crazy and shit like that. Now, there's always the concern that part of the reason why Trump doesn't give a shit about this is because him and Stephen Miller have a plan to try to steal the 2026 midterm elections. I'm a little skeptical about that. These guys don't really seem all that good at planning, but that does not mean that we should not be vigilant about making sure that our votes are counted, and making sure that we were on the phone with our state reps and making sure they have contingency plans for anything that Trump and his cronies might try to do to interrupt voting in 2026. But yeah, financial gain is part of it. I think part of it is just his brain is stuck in the 1980s, and he thinks that attacking the Middle East for oil is still the move. And he doesn't really give a shit. Like, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about the war. He doesn't care about. He only cares about it being politically bad for himself or making him unpopular or whatever. And I think that he's had so much luck in changing the conversation in the past that he thinks that he can just sort of like sweep this under the rug as well. I just don't think that whatever his strategy is working. But, it is true that him and his family are making a shit ton of money off of this, just the same way that they're making a shit ton of money off of everything in the presidency. All right, Stoner Drew says, what is the one single 26 race that could be a catalyst? I don't know if there is a one single 26 race. I think probably the race that will drop the most jaws is probably Tallarico in Texas. But there's a lot of. I'm imagining that, assuming that things are free and fair in 26, that there will be a lot of jaw-dropping seats switched from Republican to Democrats. All right, John Babley says, what do you like about Chris Best? What is his track record like? I'll be honest, it is mainly a vibes thing. Like, I really love him in interviews. I love him during investigations. I think that he just fucking nails it where the messaging is concerned. Like, he gave a speech to Kristi Noem about all the things that ICE was doing that were illegal, and it was just like letter perfect. And I was like, all right, yeah, that's my fucking guy. He's always appeared to me as one of those guys that puts his head down and does the fucking work, which I really appreciate. All right, Stephen Peterson says, I like to see handsome Gavin Newsom in the next presidential election. Well, some people really like him. Some people really hate him. He's definitely not in my top 5. Will says, ICE is goated. So that's not an accurate thing that you just said there, Will. ICE is a rogue agency acting illegally and immorally. And so you can ask a question or you can leave. Real Bennett says, thoughts on Mamdani not marching in the Israel Day parade. So I haven't read too much up about it. I only saw that it happened. My gut is telling me that he was just worried about it being like a political firestorm, like it would be so controversial if he was there. And I know that people could then just say, well, it's controversial if he wasn't there because the mayor usually goes. I don't know. Maybe he wanted to send a message like, we are changing the priority, even as we are making sure that Jewish people in America and in New York are safe. And trying to stem the tide of anti-Semitism. Yeah, I need to look into that a little bit more. What's up, Mikhail Meme? Good to see you again. Will says, migration is illegal, mate. No, it isn't. And again, that was not a question, so you're out of here. Lady Lynn says, why is Trump so anti-migration, even legal migration? Simple answer, lady, is because he's a racist. He is a hardcore racist. He doesn't really care about migration so long as it is a predominantly white country, or so long as he can specify just the white people. Like, he keeps on increasing the number of, oh, hey, so my live just got reported for harassment and bullying. My guess is that because I called Trump a racist, that is the reason why that happened. So we are really early into the live stream, so I'll probably stop and restart just so I can get out from under the thumb of this harassment flag. But yeah, he's a racist, and so long as I'm flagged, I can just go ahead and double down on that. So yeah, he keeps on increasing the number of white refugees that he's allowing from South Africa. So, it seems pretty cut and dry to me. All right, everybody, I'm going to stop and restart my TikTok to get out from under this ban. So if you like the live stream, please come right back. We will be right back on the live stream. Be right back, be right back, be right back. Come on back, everybody. Here we go. Alrighty, and if you're watching on Twitch or on YouTube, we are still live. So go ahead and throw your questions in the chat. Go ahead and throw those questions in the chat, and we will get to answering them. Welcome, everybody, to Ask Me Anything About Politics. My name is Jared, and I'm here to answer all your questions about politics, be they simple or complicated. Everybody is welcome, whether you are a Republican, a Democrat, something in the middle, something on the outskirts. I do not judge, I do not roast, I do not debate. I am not here to get into fights with you guys. I am just here to answer all of your questions in good faith. Mikhail Meme says, thoughts on your mayor and governor? They're both kind of just like okay to me. Like I know that Karen Bass and Newsom have done like completely okay things. They've done things that I like and done things that I don't like. So I don't think that either of them are the worst in the world, but neither of them are sort of like the progressive champion that we are looking for in this day, or at least that I am looking for. Stephen Peterson says, do you think Trump actually would care if he's removed from office since he's a billionaire? Yeah, I think that he wants to be. There's a couple of things. He's really concerned about his legacy because he is staring down the barrel of not being on this earth any longer. And that's the reason why he's so obsessed with building a ballroom and building an arch and covering shit with gold that doesn't need to be covered with gold, and et cetera, et cetera. He wants to die in office, basically. And if that means like declaring martial law and canceling elections in 28, then that's what he's going to do. But also it shields him from political liability. And so him going to jail is back on the table once he is removed from office. And while the Supreme Court can make that more difficult and potentially delay that eventuality for, however long it takes, there's definitely a higher likelihood that he goes to jail the second that he gets out of office. Tito says, is Kosovo Serbia, dude? I don't know. Lady Lynn says, used SCSB basically protects refinery workers, but was slimmed down by Trump. Yeah, Trump is anti-union, so obviously he would do that. All right, John Bradley says, do you think Congress should legislate more parameters for EPA, OSHA, ICE to prevent partisanship? Oh, yeah, 100%, John Bradley. Now, unfortunately, some of this just comes down to who's the person in charge. Like, there's only so much that you can do to make the government, Republican proof. Because it really, the laws are there, but we need human beings to enforce those laws as well. Like, the best thing you can do is not vote for people who will nominate bad people to run those organizations, and also not vote for people who will confirm those nominations. Like, this is exactly why you should not vote for Republicans, either for president or Senate or House or state rep or whatever, because they have shown that they don't give a shit about these organizations that are legally mandated to be there being run by people who are trying to destroy them. It's clear. Aaron Gregory says, do you know anything about the Graham Plattner text scandal? Yeah, so apparently he was sexting or texting with somebody who wasn't his wife. I don't know how recently this was, but just based on the way that his wife was responding, it seems like maybe it was a while ago. And if his wife is saying, like, grow the fuck up to the news media and how they're covering this, then I don't think that anybody in Maine should give a shit. All right, Tito Slav, I answered that already. Me versus the world and I win. Says, doesn't matter who you vote for, they are both the same wing of the same winged beast. That is inaccurate, me versus the world. If you want me to tell you why that's inaccurate, I will, but please do not keep on posting both sides propaganda in my live stream or I will boot you. SLT says, it's 8 other women and at least none of them were underage. Yeah, he's fucking goated then. Man, as far as sex scandals are concerned. Oh, none of them were below the age of 18? Well, you get to be president then, man. All right, Caleb says, as a Democrat, I was wondering why under Obama children were in cages. So that is a slightly inaccurate way of describing that whole thing, Caleb. So there was a law on the books already about the right way to detain people and their children. Part of the reason why you want to separate them at a certain point is so that you can actually make sure that those are their kids. Because that's something that coyotes will do, is they will like pair children with like random adults just to make it so that they can get into the country easier. Now, Obama did this differently than the Trump administration did, where Obama was like, we are making the best of a bad situation. And once we can prove that these kids belong to these adults, then we will return them. And they did. 100% of the time. There were no children whose parents were lost. There are no children who are not currently orphans because their parents were lost in the system or sent to like other countries. That is the opposite of what the Trump administration did. The Trump administration, not only did they not do the child separation just because they were trying to do the right thing, they were specifically separating children from their parents as a deterrent, which is not what Obama did, which is barbaric in my opinion. But then it seemed as though they were purposefully trying to lose the parents so that the children would become orphans. Like, it seemed intentional. Like, you don't lose thousands of children's parents unless you are doing that on purpose, you know? So yeah, different situation. Obama still way better. Lady Lynn says Vance or Rubio 28. I mean, they're both terrible. All right, what's up, John Abbott? Good to see you again. What's up, Average Joe? Good to see you again. Mikhail Meme says, what can the U.S. economy do with all the money Elon Musk owns privately? I mean, feed the hungry, house the unhoused, free public college, universal health care. Yeah, that's, done and done, man. Just give us all that fucking money. Average Joe says, who has a higher makeup budget, RuPaul's Drag Race or Trump in his cabinet? That's pretty funny. I don't know. Seaflon says, don't attribute to malice what can be accounted to incompetence. Yeah, Seaflon, I guess that is also a possibility for why the Trump administration lost thousands and thousands of parents. But it did seem malicious. Like, they weren't even keeping them in the same state. Like, why would you go through that extra effort unless you were purposefully trying to create orphans? Lady Lynn says, what do you think about Israel and U.S. armies fusing? Oh, I'm against that. Ollie B. Weck says, do you answer questions about international politics? I do, but my knowledge level about international politics is way less than my knowledge about American politics. And so you can ask me about Serbia or whatever. I might not be able to answer the question. Okay, Lady Lynn says, do you think it will pass Congress? That is a really good question, Lady Lynn. So I haven't checked out the details of that bill yet. What's important to remember is that, number one, the government is currently in charge of the Republican Party, and the Republican Party has not done anything to try to put any daylight between our government and the Netanyahu government. They have increased what we are sending them from the Biden administration. They have put less pressure on them to stop doing war crimes, to stop starting wars with all of their neighbors, etc. And so if it does pass, I'm pretty confident that it will be with 0 Democratic votes. But because even that seems beyond the pale, and in the Senate we have a record number of Democrats that have been voting against sending more money and weapons to Israel. But yeah, I don't know. I need to look a little bit more into it. Okay, John Abbott. Let's see here. The Trump administration changed the software and removed the family codes. Agents who cared about trying to keep families together were writing codes on Post-it notes and pinning them to babies' clothes. Yeah, again, it seems like they were doing this on purpose. All right, some dude says, why do you think Trump brags about taking 4 cognitive tests? Trump takes everything that that happens to him or that he does and tries to turn it into a brag. He is the, I didn't get broken up with, I broke up with her so I could have sex with hotter people of a human president, Oh, you got an F on that test? Yeah, I got an F on purpose because the test was a bad test. And, blah, blah, blah. It proves I'm a genius by getting an F on that test because I was trying to do that, Yeah, and honestly, I don't understand why people fall for that shit. How do you not see used car salesmen whenever that dude fucking opens his mouth and talks about how great everything he fucking does is and how he's never done anything wrong in his entire life? Fog War Production says that last couple of administrations destroyed my faith in White House medical staff. Yeah, I mean, that is an interesting thing to hear about from the people that used to work in the Obama administration, is how many of those doctors that they worked with and that they thought were great ended up being not great. Okay, L3UBD says, do you like DIH? I don't know what DIH is. Hocus says, what do you think about politics in Singapore? Don't know anything about it. All right, thank you, Oceanaholic. Stephen Peterson says, do you think J.D. Vance could have actually made a decent VP or president if not aligned with Trump? It's a really good question, Stephen Peterson, and I guess there are so many things that he has done even before getting the nomination for VP from Donald Trump that have shown me that he doesn't really give a shit about anything but his own power and fame and bank accounts. And so, yeah, smart guy, but a guy who is willing to like throw his own community under the bus, lie about shit, go back on things that he said that apparently are supposed to be like, part of his moral foundation. Like him being this version of a Trump vice president is just, the anvil that broke the camel's back, in my opinion. Kelvin says, what side do you lean? Left. NT says, are you a Mossad agent? No. P. Ned says, do you know about Bulgarian politics? No, I do not. So sorry. DYL says, do you think our lack of punishments toward the Confederacy post-Civil War resulted in Jim Crow, etc.? I think that a case could be made. That's not really my area of expertise, but it does seem as though we kind of dropped the ball during Reconstruction. Like we were a little bit too, good winners towards a bunch of sore losers. Mikhail Beam says, have you ever debated a Republican? I mean, yeah, I used to do a lot of like yelling back and forth with people on the internet, but I don't do that anymore. I don't find it productive. Too forgiving towards the South. Yes, that's the word I was looking for, Mr. Green. Ollie says, are you a socialist or a social democrat? I'm not a socialist. I'm not a communist. I'm not a capitalist. I believe in a mixed model like they have in Norway. You could say I'm a democratic socialist, like a Bernie or an AOC or a Mamdani. But I prefer to call myself a progressive Democrat. DGNK, do not post about libertarian flangism. I don't know what it is. I know trolling when I see it. Ha 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 says, thoughts on Duterte? I don't know enough about him, so sorry. Jack Mull says, do you seriously believe there would be a change in voting Democrat or Republican? Yeah, of course. There have been in the past and there will be in the future, Jack. There are people alive today because of the Affordable Care Act, which was only possible because people voted for Democrats. And there are women who are dead today because of abortion bans that were only possible because people voted for Republicans. And to say that there's no change depending on who is in charge says that you are living a life of incredible privilege, Jack. Stephen Peterson says, have there ever been a Republican that you have considered voting for or did vote for? I thought McCain was okay. I remember saying in 2008, that I really liked Obama, but that if McCain won, that I wouldn't be mad because he really did seem like a good guy who was not, not beholden to the worst tendencies of his own political party. Him saying to that one woman at his rally, that Obama is not a terrorist or a Muslim or whatever, yeah, seems like a good guy. But I have not seen one iota of backbone from any Republican since. I mean, unless you count the ones that have all had to dip out of the party because of Donald Trump, like Jeff Flake and Liz Cheney and shit like that. All right, some dude says, do you think this new anti-Israel Republican sticking around? I mean, they're not in office, it's all the fan base, it's all the commentators that are anti-Israel. So I don't know. I haven't seen it sort of work out at all. Tom Pearl Gaming says, I don't know what you're doing, but please stop. Okay. Man Nintendo says, do you know any parties from Poland? No, I do not. All right, Tom, I warned you, and now you are out of here. See you later. Okay. Oh, Tung Tung's a Fortnite skin. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. MAGA versus says, McCain sang bomb Iran in 2008. Yeah, he wasn't perfect, obviously. He was still a Republican. So, obviously, that is starting at a massive deficit. But best Republican that I could think of in recent memory. Okay, Lady Lynn says, will Vivek win Ohio in November? Let's sure hope not. But nobody knows who's going to win the elections. People just make their best guesses, and political predictions are completely worthless, Lady Lynn. Dill says, should we disband/reform the party system due to the strong tribalism found within it? No, I do not believe that the two-party system is the thing that is responsible for the tribalism that we are suffering right now. The billionaire coalition paired together with the Republican Party have put a lot of time, money, and energy into creating this kind of cultural divide between left and right in America. It's the story of, they want us fighting amongst ourselves so that we don't go after them. Now, that doesn't mean that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party are the same or that they're both owned by the billionaire class. Like, it does matter who you vote for. But I'm not going to yell at a voter when there are elected Republicans who are actually doing the fucking thing, Okay, Ben Hur says Democrats and communists have more money. That is wildly inaccurate, Ben Hur. If you would like me to tell you why that is, let me know. But otherwise, just stop saying things that are false, please. Ray Yan says opinions on Nick Fuentes. I'm not going to say anything about Nick Fuentes that he hasn't said about himself. But Nick Fuentes describes himself as somebody who does not like women, does not like Jewish people, does not like minorities. And I think that that's a really bad human being there. All right, Ben Hur, if you want me to tell you why what you said was wrong, I will. But you have to ask a question or I'm going to boot you. Some dude says, if you ever see the U.S. getting worse, do you ever see yourself leaving? Yeah, my wife and I have talked about it. It's hard, but, it depends on how bad things get. We were seriously considering leaving after Trump won in 24. I don't think either of us predicted how shitty they would be at turning their fascist agenda into a reality. Like, in some ways, they've been wildly successful. But in other ways, it's like, dude, if you had just kept prices down, if you had just not gone into Iran, you probably could have got away with this, Okay, the dude says, where would you leave to? Probably, an English-speaking country like Canada or the UK. My wife loves Scotland, so maybe we would go there if we could, Manfro says, which types of socialism contains capitalism except social democracy? I mean, people talk about social democracy. I don't know what it means. But if you look at Canada, if you look at Europe, if you look at Norway, if you look at the Nordic countries, you will see that's what I'm talking about. And whether you want to call it a mixed model or social democracy or democratic socialism or whatever, like, that's what I want, is what they have. Andreas Dad says, do you live in a blue state? Yes, I do. But I've lived in red states also. Chili Supremacy says, you should collab with Gianmarco Ceresi for stand-up. I think he's way too famous for him to ever return my calls ever again. But I liked him. We worked together a bunch in the past. The dude says, U.S. military plus Israeli military equals NWO. I don't know what NWO means. Digital Micah says, if Dems win this November, who thinks Republicans will start January 6, 2.0? I do not believe that the MAGA base is going to be motivated to do another January 6th after the midterms. But in 28 is a different story. Dan says, do you know anything about the current UK political situation? The only thing I know about the current UK political system is that Keir Starmer's got to go, but never vote Reform and never vote Tory. You should only vote for the left-leaning parties. I hear the Greens are doing good over there. The Greens in America suck, but it sounds like the Greens are good over there. New World Order. That seems a little hyperbolic, but yeah, I don't think they should do that regardless. All right, somebody, purple-faced man, says, the alt-right is dangerously going down the same path as the far left. The same target, Israel. So there's a lot of things in that statement that I don't really vibe with, purple-faced. Like, it's almost like you're saying that the far left was doing something dangerous before the far right, which there's no data to support that at all. All right, Noel Gallagher says, do you like the Italian government? Not currently. I don't know what they've been doing, but I do know that isn't the prime minister like Mussolini's granddaughter or some shit like that? So yeah, far right parties I don't fuck with. Okay, Dan says, nope, Greens are an insane party who want to legalize all rugs and open borders. So I don't know if any of that is true, Dan. And I doubt that it is. There's a lot of hyperbole surrounding left-leaning parties that is usually funded by the billionaire class. So I would say don't believe that shit. All right, Mr. Green says, thoughts on Israel's genocide? I'm against it. Dan says, no, sir, that's in their manifesto. Okay, Dan, I'm not going to argue about UK politics. I don't know enough about it. Okay, somebody said Bibi is the best prime minister in history. I mean, if you like war crimes and genocide, then yeah, but you're in question jail, whatever your name is, who said Bibi is the best prime minister in history. RB says, what do you think about Kosovo? I don't know enough about it. Alrighty, scrolling up. Mr. Green says, do you think Israel needs to be stopped? I don't think Israel needs to be stopped. I think that Netanyahu needs to be stopped. I think the far right in the Israeli government needs to be stopped. And I believe that includes Ben-Gvir. There are other people besides Netanyahu in that government that are working together. I can't remember all their names, though. Fire Obsessed says Al Gore in 2028. I mean, I've always liked Al Gore, but I don't know how old he is. Maybe now is not the time for him. Okay, Dan says, do you believe Hamas needs to be destroyed? That's a really difficult question, Dan, because Hamas is a terrorist organization. So obviously, that's not great. Is there a way to reform Hamas the same way that we could just elect new leaders to the Israeli government, and then we would not need to destroy Israel? You know, so yeah, potentially. I don't know. That's is it the ideology specifically? Is it rotten from toe to tip? I don't know. All right, somebody says 70,000 is not a genocide. I don't believe that the number has anything to do with it. Also, I'm done with you. See you later. Fogwar Production says, what is your ideal foreign policy? We should do aid, and we should help people who are being invaded by bad faith, by aggressive, hostile nations. Yeah, and then we should just try to use America's soft power. There's a lot of good in the Obama administration, like normalizing relations with Cuba, the Iran nuclear deal, more shit like that. Okay, Gozarian says, failing capitalism had no choice but to continue fascism. Both Dems and Republicans did nothing to stop it. So that is inaccurate, goes to the Gozarian. If you would like me to tell you why that is inaccurate, I'm happy to, but you are not allowed to just continue posting both sides bullshit propaganda on my live stream. So ask a question, but if you keep on doing that, then I'm going to blop you. You're going to get blopped, man. Okay, Average Joe says, are you a pugilist? Isn't that somebody who fights? I'm not a fighter, I'm a lover. Let's see here. Mikhail Mean says, should kids who go to school eat for free like it is in only 3 countries in the world, Sweden, Finland, Estonia? Yeah, 100%. Kids should eat for free if they're going to school, 100%. All right, scrolling down to the bottom. Dayton sends, so help more Ukraine? Yeah, help Ukraine. Dan says, what do you think of absolute monarchy as a political system? I'm against it. Swish, swash, I'm on cracks. His opinion on isolationism. I'm against it. Goose says, you doing uppies? No. VVV says, Obama did it better. Accurate. Yes. Mr. Green says, I think both side arguments are bad, but most people don't understand what these sides actually are. Yeah, I think that's a pretty accurate thing to say. I think that I think the Democratic Party is better than people think, and the Republican Party is worse than people think. Okay, Dan says, why against monarchy? Because the people should rule themselves. Falling Box says, you go into more detail if you'd like. Do you believe in God? I don't believe in like a specific God. I believe that there are more things between heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy, Horatio. I believe that there's a lot of weird shit out there that we don't really understand. And so I'm not a full materialist, but I am sort of agnostic. Goes to Gozarian says, games keep furthering themselves from the working class. Not the same, just not enough to stop fascism. All right, that's not a question, Gozer. That's just your final warning. And also, that is not true that Dems keep furthering themselves from the working class. T-Bone Ace says, do you think more anonymous congressional voting would be better for the USA and why? I don't think so. On the one hand, you would get more Republicans voting against the Trump agenda, but on the other hand, you could potentially have people voting for, to cut taxes for the wealthy, and then we would want to know who did that, so that we could vote them out. I think 100% people in government need to be responsible for their votes. And so I think it is just as important that we have them on record voting for Trump's agenda as we have, people who are voting against it. Mikhail Meme says, thoughts on Keir Starmer? I don't know. He shat the bed. Smarter people than me have convinced me that he shat the bed. Okay, Goes to the Gozarian says, you think both taking money from AIPAC isn't similar? So that is kind of a question, so I'm going to allow that. Goes to the Gozarian. But no, it's not similar, because there's a big difference between taking money from AIPAC and then allowing Israel to do whatever the fuck they want and taking money from AIPAC and trying to stop Israel from doing whatever they want. If you're looking for the politicians that are not taking money from AIPAC, they are all in the Democratic Party. If you're looking for politicians that are trying to stop organizations like AIPAC from buying politicians, they are all in the Democratic Party. If you're looking for the politicians that stand up to AIPAC and stand up to Netanyahu, they are all in the Democratic Party. If you're looking for the politicians that vote against sending more money and weapons to Israel, they're all in the Democratic Party. So again, yeah, it's different. It's different. Somebody who cuts you with a knife and somebody who shoots a bullet in your brain, they both broke the law, but one of them is worse. Ivan Cisco says, how do we find out if early voting is available for November? I believe you can give that a Google. It depends on where you live, what district, what state. But yeah, worst case scenario, get in touch with your Secretary of State's office. Dayton says, why do you think MAGA had so much hype in the internet, and is that the main reason Democrats lost? I think that our information environment has been completely captured by the billionaire class and right-wing agitators and adversarial foreign nations. And so if you have as much money as the billionaire class has, then you can afford to completely manipulate social media algorithms to push the narratives that make it so that your politicians win. And that's exactly what we saw happening in 24. Now, obviously, there were a bunch of things that the Democratic Party did that did not help the situation, but I still think that propaganda and misinformation fueled by right-wing billionaire cash is a large reason why the Democrats did so poorly in 24. Franca says, censorship on private-owned social media affects everyday freedom of speech. I think that's generally accurate. Look, Purple Face says, look, Dems need to realize Trump isn't even on the top of the fascist iceberg. He's bad, but still. I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, he's the current fascist president of the United States, Purple Face. Okay, Chili Supremacy says, do you like Promania? I do. Mr. Green says, oh, Mr. Green Jr., that's what the JR stands for. Do you think taking AIPAC money should be an immediate disqualifier for any Democratic nominee? In the primary, yes. In the general, no. Because you should always be voting for better over worse. If you do not vote for a Democratic candidate in the general, just because they took AIPAC money, you're making it easier for a Republican that also took AIPAC money to win that election. And that is going to be worse. Worse for the people of Palestine, worse for the people of Iran, worse for the people of Lebanon, worse for everybody. So there you go. All right, DJGS says, thoughts on Nigel Farage. He is a far right-wing political hack. Do not vote for. Mr. Green says, but we need to show up for our primaries. We do. We have terrible voter participation in America. At its peak, 60%, but that was only during the 2020 presidential election. There are more people voting than not voting in elections in America. And so, yeah, let's fucking bump those numbers up. One of the ways that I believe that we solve the political problems that we are experiencing here in America today is by increasing voter participation in every election, including primaries. Christopher says, are you just a lefty? I'm not just a lefty. I'm lots of things. Purple Face says, there is worse. The true string puller hasn't revealed themselves. That sounds a little conspiracy theory-ish. Purple Face. How about we keep things in the world of agreed upon facts? Righty, Average Justice. Do you consider a group to be a terrorist organization based on U.S. nations and such, or do you base it on your own assessment of their actions? I base it on whether they do collective punishment. So the fact that Hamas targeted civilians during October 7th means that they are a terrorist organization, in my opinion. Goes to the Gozerian says, when you look at Tucker, he will win because he's doing a good job of pretending to be working class. I mean, I am worried about how good of a job Tucker is doing of pretending to be working class, but he's a liar, and so nobody should vote for him. Also, Gozer, I gotta tell you, you're pushing a lot of my buttons, my guy. Do not tell me who is or is not going to win, because you do not know that. Nobody knows that. I cannot tell you how many accounts I have seen over the past 15 years of people saying, this person is definitely going to win and that person definitely did not win. So have some humility, okay? You do not know everything's going to happen in the future. I would go so far as to say that nobody knows anything about what's going to happen in the future. Dan says, Trump has secured your border and secured U.S. energy security. You agree? No, I do not agree with that at all. Okay, Christopher says capitalism over socialism any day. No, mixed model. Let's have them together. Let's mix them together instead. Alrighty, Dan. Let me get into that in just a second. Cal Corant says, "How do you think you get more people to vote? Postal proxy is a thing. Youth still don't vote." I'm talking to people. We need to convince people in real life to go vote. There are a lot of paid accounts all over social media trying to convince people not to vote, trying to convince people to either vote for Republicans or not to vote at all. And we need to change that. And the way that we change that is by talking to people in real life, our friends, our family, our neighbors, our coworkers. We got to phone tree our way into more people voting in this country. All right, Dan says Trump has secured your border and secured U.S. energy security. So he's not secured U.S. energy security. The short version is that the war with Iran has completely depleted all of our strategic oil reserve, which means that Americans are going to be paying a lot more, and potentially we're going to be suffering from energy blackouts from a lack of supply. People are not going to be able to put gas in their cars and shit like that. And as people are moving to a more electric grid system, Trump is defunding those systems. He is defunding all of the agencies that are supposed to be protecting our energy grid from attacks. So that's number one. There's a lot of ways in which he has made us more energy insecure. Now, as far as securing the border goes, the border is as secure as it was during the Biden administration. People will tell you that the Biden administration opened the borders. That is factually inaccurate. Instead, Trump has diverted resources from other agencies and put them towards actually rounding up brown people and trying to deport them, whether they are illegal or not. So, yeah, has he made legal immigration harder? Yes. Has he made legal immigration virtually impossible for everybody who isn't rich or white? Yes. But what has that done? That just means that people who are struggling, people who are desperate to get out of whatever country they're in because of civil war or gang violence or whatever, now they're going to have to resort to illegal means to come to America. And so that means putting more money and power into the hands of the cartel. So he has basically increased illegal immigration by making legal immigration basically impossible, making coming the right way basically impossible. Mikhail Meme asks, is your family Democratic or Republican? My family's always been Democrats, but there's a big difference between me, my Democratic beliefs, and my parents' Democratic beliefs, where like they were like soft Democrats. They were like, yeah, we believe in freedom and we're liberal, and so we usually vote for Democrats. But I don't think that they were never as passionate about it as I am. I do not believe. And if you want me to go into more detail, Mikhail, about how Keir Starmer shit the bed, I don't have those details for you, unfortunately. I have forgotten them. Alrighty, let me get into this. Max Schmidt says, would you agree Biden reversing Trump border policy directly affected the border? No, the policies that Biden reversed, I do not believe had that effect on the border. I believe that the reason why we had so much migration during the Biden administration was because specifically people felt safe coming to this country again, as opposed to getting your children ripped out of your arms and then lost forever. I think that there was probably like we got to go right now because the next Republican president is going to make it impossible for us to come again kind of a thing. But yeah, Biden did both things that pissed off the right and pissed off the left. Like he kept some policies that were draconian and did not make any sense, but then he also loosened restrictions for asylum seekers and things like that, which I would argue is a good thing, So let's see here. Charlie says, where do you stand politically? I'm a progressive Democrats. Joshua Kimmich says, what made you political? It was a bunch of different things. When I graduated from college, I started waiting tables and I started living in a way that for the first time I was like, wow, this system fucking sucks. Like health insurance sucks. The tax plan sucks. The way that I could work this job for the rest of my fucking life and never be able to stop. That fucking sucks. I am a waiter, and so I'm making more than the busboys. And my life fucking sucks economically. Their life fucking sucks even more. And it's not fair that I get to have a slightly less shitty life just because they don't speak English as good as I do. Like, that fucking sucks, you know? So, and then I just kept on looking at who was responsible for the policies that were creating all of these inequities, and it was always the Republican Party. Okay, Dayton says, are you against voting with IDs? If so, why not be like the whole of Europe? I don't know if the whole of Europe uses IDs to vote, Dayton. I would need to double check that. But the reason why I'm against voting voter ID is because the Republican Party has only used voter ID to try to get people to not vote. It is a voter suppression tactic. And the Democratic Party has come out and said, hey, if you want voter ID so bad, we'll compromise. Let's make these IDs free to get and easy to attain. And then you won't be able to use it as a voter suppression tactic. And the Republican Party has said no. The only reason they want voter ID is to keep people that vote for Democrats to be able to vote. End of story. Varex says, do you think the proletariat should own the means of production? Yes. Right. Mr. Green says, do you think the workers should... Oh, I already did that one. Okay, scrolling up. Triska says, what other countries are aligned with Israel, and are they a bigger threat worldwide? You know, it feels, and I could be wrong about this, this is not my area of expertise, but it feels as though the countries that are still aligned with Israel are the countries that were so because they were always kind of slowly pulled along with America's foreign policy. And as European countries are kind of like waking up to the flaws of the Trump administration, specifically's foreign policy, they are starting to question a lot of those allegiances. And so where we're seeing it happen very slowly in like the UK, we're seeing it happen a lot faster in other countries like France and Germany and shit like that. Now, adversarial nations like, you know, North Korea and Russia and China, like that, I don't know. That's an open question, unfortunately. All right, trivia says, so I live in Kansas. Why are we so progressive but also so conservative? I guess I don't know what you mean by Kansas being progressive. Trivia, can you let me know? Dayton says, okay, maybe it's an exaggeration, but majority has voter ID system, but I really like that compromise. Yeah, so ask yourself, Dayton, why won't the Republican Party do that? Why will the Republican Party not, if they're so fucking horny for voter ID, why will they not let Americans get the fucking IDs that they need to vote? Why have they used voter ID to suppress votes in the past in states where you need an ID to vote? Why have they closed down DMVs in Democratic neighborhoods? Why have they closed down polling locations in Democratic neighborhoods? If you look at certain states that are controlled by Republicans in Democratic neighborhoods, it takes 8 hours to vote sometimes. Why do they make it illegal to give water and food to people who are waiting in line to vote all fucking day? Seems real fucking sus to me. Seems real fucking sus. Trivia trees who voted for abortion but still vote for Republicans. So I don't know if I would say that means that Kansas is progressive. I think that they were just motivated by that one very specific issue. And if I'm correct, there was still a significant number of people who voted against having abortion be available in Kansas. And as far as like why Kansas is so conservative, I mean, like all the red states, I believe, are kind of stuck in a Civil War mentality. You know, like all the people who lived there during the Civil War stayed there, raised their families there, and then generation after generation was taught that the war of northern aggression was bad and should have gone the other way. You know, years, decades of Republican governments cutting funding for education, devaluing education, cutting social services, monopolization, you know, like I'm sure, yeah. I don't know too much about Kansas specifically, but I think that the model works for all red states, basically. Excuse me. Okay, Mick says, what do you think about Peter Thiel moving to Argentina? I love that he feels like he might need to move to Argentina. Like, I love that he lives in a country that is waking up to him and his fucking bullshit. Like, fucking go to Argentina, Peter Thiel. Go to Argentina. Ooh, ready. Let's see here. I don't know anything about the Rams. But Scott Clower says, why is voting always on a work day? So I have the same issue with voting being on a weekday, Scott, but it seems as though a lot of states have woken up to that and have put a lot of time and energy into expanding voting. So the last day to vote is now a work day, but early voting is the thing. Vote by mail is a thing. Voter drop boxes are a thing. So I'm much less annoyed by that. You know, I would love it if the first day of voting was on a Saturday. And that way we could have like the big celebration of the first day of voting, you know, and everybody goes out on Saturday or Sunday and votes, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't bother me too much, you know, but I guess I just worry for the states that don't have early voting and they don't have, you know, vote by mail. Oh, right. Caffeine Free Uncle says it should be a voting period Saturday through Tuesday. Yeah, sounds good to me. Sea Dog says, in your opinion, what's the best voting system? I think that the person that gets the most votes should be president. So let's get rid of the Electoral College. And I think we should have ranked choice voting so that we can have more than two political parties in America. Zarad says, what's your idealistic form of government structure? Like they have in Norway, a mixed model of capitalism, socialism, and communism. We already have a mixed model here in America. We just have a little too much capitalism, in my opinion. Harry W. says, what is your opinion on the current state of politics in the United Kingdom? All I know about UK politics is never vote Reform, never vote Tory. You can vote for a left-leaning party like the Greens or Labour. Skylar says, since politicians usually can't/won't follow through with the platform they run on, how should we choose? You know, Skylar, I have the most cynical way that I can describe this is you should at least vote for the politicians that are lying correctly. And if we vote for the politicians that say they're going to do the good things and then they don't vote for and they don't do the good things, then we replace them with other politicians who will do the good things. But the problem that we have in America is that people keep going back and forth from people that say they're going to do the good things and then only do some of the good things, and then they vote for the people who say we're going to undo all those good things that the Democrats just did, and we're also going to do a whole bunch of really terrible things. All right, so let me know if you want me to go into more specifics on that one. Dayton says, as a European, I see the redrawing of voting districts as really shady and without purpose. Am I wrong? No, you are 100% correct about that. And I want to say one more thing about that, Dayton. First of all, Trivia, Aaron, Joe, and Mia, thank you so much for helping me reach my second gift goal of the day. So what you're talking about is called gerrymandering, the redrawing of districts so that politicians pick their voters and not voters picking their politicians. And the Democrats tried to make it illegal when they were in control of the government during the Biden administration. And so, as everybody is pointing to every blue state that's doing retaliatory gerrymandering right now, I will only say Democrats have been trying to make gerrymandering illegal for a long time. And Republicans keep on voting against it. So as far as I'm concerned, every single blue state can gerrymander the fuck out of their shit. And once they have a majority in government, they can make gerrymandering illegal again. But if you keep on voting for Republicans, gerrymandering's still going to happen, guys. End of story. Boy, I've been saying end of story a lot today. Okay, we're almost at an hour, everybody. So I'm going to start wrapping things up. Excellent questions today. Thank you for being here. If you want to support the show financially, you can, but you don't have to. I know we're all struggling financially, but if you have the dollars and you want to give it to me because you think what I'm doing here is productive and good for society, then the mechanisms exist. You can send gifts on TikTok. You can send bits on Twitch. You can be a super fan on TikTok. You can become a subscriber on Twitch. And if you have Amazon Prime, you can subscribe to my Twitch for free. Costs you $0, helps me out a ton. Hold on a second. Kayla the Furry says, it's all a facade which allows for capital to rule the life of the proletariat over and over. No, it is not all of a facade. Kayla. The Democratic Party is a lot better than the Republican Party. I can give you a lot more details on that if you like, but if you just look at the past 50 years, it is clear. The parties are different. Different things happen when different people are in charge, both on the state and federal level, and Democrats are better. Democrat liberal model is either let a more lenient party capital rule or more restrictive. No, yeah, I don't agree. I don't agree, Kayla. We would have a more progressive America right now if we were not just switching back and forth from Republicans and Democrats, because Democrats do the work. They do go there. They just haven't been given enough runway or power in order to make that happen. So yeah, I reject your claim, Kayla. All right, regular streaming schedule is Monday through Friday, starting around 11:30 a.m. Pacific time. That is subject to change at a moment's notice because I have a 5-week-old baby daughter. If you have any questions that I was not able to get to on this live stream, then please get in touch. I want to be a resource for you to be more involved and more informed about politics. So however I can do that, use me and abuse me. My DMs are open. You can hit me up via my website. Link is in the bio. Or you can hit me up on my Discord channel. Link is on the bio. And the Discord is also great because there's a great community there of people who also are down with discussing politics in a not shitty way. There's recommendations there for books and podcasts. And there are recommendations there for civic actions that you can take. Like if you're someone like me and you see what's going on in the world and you're like, fuck this shit, I want to help, man, but you don't know what to do, go to the Discord. There are recommendations there. And we need more people doing exactly that work. So go to the Discord, check out the thread called The Work, and just do some of that shit. You don't have to do all of it. Just do a little bit of it. And if we get enough people doing a little bit of the work, then all the work gets done and nobody had to break a fucking sweat. How great would that be? Mikhail Beam says, would you live in Sweden? Oh, yeah. I hear wonderful things about Sweden. I've never been there, so I couldn't tell you for certain. But everything that I have heard about it seems very nice over there. Oh, Dan, I completely forgot to mention the Patreon. Thank you for reminding me of the Patreon. You can join my Patreon for as little as $1 a month. Link is in the bio. And there's a very fun incentive at $10 a month if you feel like doing that. Special thanks to my regular financial contributors, Muzz King, Pliff, Average Joe, It's the Rocketeer, Lauren, Triska, Lost Fat Boy, the two Seans, D, Robert, Shannon, Carmine, and Patrick. If you also want to have your name read at the end of the show, become a Twitch subscriber, become a TikTok super fan, or... Oh, wait a minute. I just thanked some people who aren't even funders anymore. Grimicus! That's what I meant to say. So yeah, or join the Patreon. Carmine says, was that only one shot? No, there's two shots. Dave says, how does it end for the Republican Party? My guess is that once Trump is gone, there's going to be a scramble for the base of the Republican Party. And it's going to split basically into the kind of like neocons and the anti-Israel MAGA crowd. I believe Tucker is probably going to take the mantle there because he's been the most adequate person critiquing Israel and appearing as a economic populist, even though he's a fucking liar. And yeah, then we'll have our fucking JD Vances and Don Junior's and Marco Rubio's on the other side of things. Okay, Abdul says, you can imagine if Obama threw the 250-year celebration, how many superstars would participate? Oh, God. That'd be a fucking star-studded event, man. You wouldn't have fucking Milli Vanilli canceling on you. Dayton says, who's your favorite Republican president? Oh, I don't know. It's probably somebody before the parties switched. Like, yeah. I mean, I like that Nixon created the EPA. That seems pretty cool to me. Dan Blackroyd said, it's going to be Rubio versus Vance. The winner exasperates apathy. That's very funny. All right, everybody. Dave says, Lincoln, maybe. He was a Republican. Yeah, but I mean, do we even count it? Do we count Republicans before the parties switch their ideologies on race and civil rights? I don't know. Mr. Green says, we need a Democratic Socialist to run in 28. So, Mr. Green, here's something that I want to end on. which is that I agree with you. Like, I would love a Democratic Socialist in the style of a Bernie or Elizabeth Warren to win the nomination for the Democratic Party in 2028. But here's the thing. Not everybody in the country agrees with you and me, Mr. Green. There are some people who fucking will not vote for the Republican Party, but think that Democratic Socialists are too far to the left, and they're worried about that. And so they like to vote, or they're worried that they won't win in the general election. So even though they like your Bernies is better, they'll still vote for your Gavin Newsom's because they think that Gavin's have a little bit more of an easy time winning those elections. We, as the progressive left, need to be cool with that. We need to do the work to try to convince those people to vote in the primary for the candidates that we think are better. But if we lose, we need to vote for better over worse. One of the narratives that I'm fucking tired of to the tits is, oh, my person didn't win the primary. Well, I am not voting in protest. And the world can have their fucking shitty ass Republican president as far as I care. And we need to exercise that fucking mentality from the fucking root, man. And I'm not saying that you are that, Mr. Green. I'm just saying for anybody who might be that kind of left-leaning person out there, like, it does nothing. Your not voting does nothing. Your protest vote does nothing. And all of the voting changes that you want, like other parties or ranked choice voting, the only way there is through the Democratic Party. Skylar Ruin says, I've never voted. I won't vote till I feel informed. I don't know what to be informed about. How do I know? That is a really good question, Skylar. Unfortunately, my show is right about done for the day. So I would say either, come back on another day. It's every weekday from 11:30 a.m. PT to around an hour later. Or you can shoot me a message, shoot me a DM, or shoot me an email through my website, or hit me up on my Discord, because you're exactly the kind of person I want to talk to. Like, I want you to be a voter. So yeah. Come on back, y'all. Come on back. All right. Be good to each other. Do the work and be good to each other. You don't have to be a dick to do the work. Be good to yourselves. Self-care is part of the work, don't forget. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel. Have a great week, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye. Goodbye, 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 goodbye.